Hey, what's up guys, DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing a Darklord deck profile. So I'm really excited to show you guys because this deck is an amazing deck that has hands down my favorite artwork in the entire game. I love this deck and love how it can just summon out all sorts of different really high attack point fairy monsters to your side of the field and just overwhelm the opponent. I have some really amazing techs in this deck and I am super excited to show you guys this build. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Darklord A Shell. Darklord A Shell is a really awesome card that basically lets you draw 2 cards, because you can discard this card and one other Darklord card to draw 2 cards, and then the majority of your Darklord monsters actually share the following effect: that during either player's turn, you can pay 1,000 life points to target a Darklord spell or trap in the graveyard, apply that target's effect, and then shuffle the target into the deck. And you can only use each effect of this card once per turn, and you can only special summon Darklord A Shell once per turn. But that's a very interesting thing, that you can basically get your spell and trap cards effects twice per turn by shuffling them back into the deck and paying 1,000 life points. We then play 2 copies of Darklord Naston. I just feel like 2 is totally fine. I have considered playing 3 in this build, but 2 has worked out really well for me. You discard 2 other Darklord cards to special summon this card from your hand, and it also has that ability at like a shell that you can shuffle back spell or trap into the deck that's a Darklord card, pay 1,000 life points, and apply its effect. We then play a single copy of Darklord Nirgal. Nirgal is a really good one-of, because this card, if a fairy monster attacks a defense position monster and lets you inflict piercing damage to your opponent, which is a great effect to be able to use, and it shares that ability as well as a shell and Nasdin. We then play a single copy of Amadus. Amadus is a great card because it's a single tribute to summon this card, and it has the ability you can discard this card and a Darklord card, and then target a Darklord card in the graveyard and add it to your hand, which is pretty good, but it is a -1, but it does sometimes work out with this deck to be able to go -1, because you'll get all sorts of different plays. So all of these are the Darklords that actually share that ability, that you pay 1,000 life points, target a Darklord spell or trap, shuffle it into the deck, and apply its effects. The rest of them do not have that effect. These are the only Darklords that have that ability. We then play a single copy of Darklord Morningstar. Darklord Morningstar has the ability that it cannot be special summoned, and if this card is tribute summoned, you get to special summon Darklord monsters from your hand or deck up to the number of effect monsters your opponent controls. And then while you control another Darklord monster, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and once per turn, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of Darklord monsters on the field. And if you do, you gain 500 life points for each Darklord card sent to the graveyard, which is a very good effect because it's going to get cards like your Darklord Superbia into the graveyard. It's going to get cards like your Darklord Spells and Traps in the graveyard, that then you can use your cards from Amadus all the way up to a shell to be able to copy the effects, put them back in the deck, and then use the effect. Is super good. We then play a single copy of Darklord Zerato. Darklord Zerato is a board wipe because this card is on the field. Then you can send a dark monster from your hand to the graveyard and destroy all monster opponent controls, and if you activate this effect, destroy this card during the end phase. We then play 3 copies of Darklord Superbia. Darklord Superbia is if this card comes back from the graveyard to your side of the field, you get to target a fairy monster in the graveyard and special summon that target, which is a great effect, especially with this card being 2,900 attack points. It's very good. It helps us go into rank 8 as well, because this card is a level 8, and you use cards like your Nirgal to go into additional plays. We then play 3 copies of the Indulged Darklord. This is one of the best normal summons in the entire deck. Then if this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you can take 2 Darklord monsters from your hand or deck with different levels except this card, and special summon one of them to your opponent's field and add the other to your hand. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate the effects except for fairy monsters, which is not that big of a deal because all you're trying to set up really on your first turn is your fairy monsters. We then play a single copy of Darklord Ukobak. Ukobak is really good because it's a Foolish Burial if this card is normal or special summoned, so it helps out the deck a lot, and usually this is the card that you're going to be giving to the opponent off of the Indulged Darklord. We then play 3 copies of Arklord Christia because it's super easy to summon and you always want to see this card. It's also a trade-in target, so this card is really good to be able to just discard to the graveyard if you need to, but it has the ability, if you have exactly 4 fairy monsters in the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is summoned this way, you can target any fairy monster monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, and neither player can special summon monsters in face, or neither player can special summon monsters, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, then you can place it on top of the deck instead, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just send this card from the field to the graveyard and then basically put it back on top of the deck to use it all over again. We then play 3 copies of my personal tech of this deck, and that is 3 copies of Angel 01. Angel 01 is a neat card in this deck because this card has the ability that you can special summon this card from your hand by revealing any level 7 or higher monster in your hand, and then you can only special summon this card once per turn this way, and while you control this face-up special summon card, then you can tribute summon a level 7 or higher monster in attack position during your main phase in addition to your normal summoner set, and you can only gain this effect once per turn. That's an extremely powerful effect, especially when you consider that the entire top row, except for Amethyst, is a level 7 or higher monster, and plus your Archlord Christie is a level 7 or higher monster. So for example, if you open up a copy of this and a copy of Indulged Darklord, you can basically search out your copy of your Darklord Morningstar, and then special summon this card by revealing the Morningstar, and then once you do that, tribute summon the Indulged and the copy of the Angel 01 to summon out your copy of Darklord Morningstar, and your opponent will have the copy of Uka back to be able to let you special summon any of your Dark Lords from the deck, which is very, very good, especially if you're going first for this deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Banishment of the Dark Lords. Banishment of the Dark Lords is basically the Rhoda for the deck, but this card is even better than Rhoda because it has the ability to add a Dark Lord card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. So you can add any Dark Lord card. You can add a spell, a trap, or a monster from your deck to your hand off this card. It's very simple, and you always want to see this card. We then play 3 copies of Darklord Contact. Darklord Contact is a monster reborn for this deck, which is just crazy too. Unless you special summon a Darklord monster from your graveyard in defense position, which comboed with your copy of Superbia turns into a double monster reborn. And if you bring back a shell, which is usually what you're going to be bringing back with your copy of Superbia, you can then pay 1,000 life points, shovel this card into the deck, and then once you do, you're going to be able to special summon back another monster and put this card back to draw it again later. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness is a super good card in this deck because you play so many dark monsters to be able to draw 2 and then banish a dark monster. It's a super important card and helps you dig through the deck. We then play 3 copies of Trade-In. Trade-In is a really neat card as well because you can discard any level 8 monster that you have, from your Archlord Christias to your Superbias. Even Zerato and Nirgal can be discarded to the graveyard to be able to draw 2 cards. Is super helpful for this particular build. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Darklord Rebellion. This card is very, very good. All of your Darklord traps require you to send a Darklord monster from your hand or face from your field to the graveyard to activate them. But if you copy their effects with your copies of a Shell, Nazton, any of your cards that you have, you can basically bypass that effect of sending the card from your field to the graveyard, and you just apply the effect. You don't have to apply the cost, which is really cool because the cost is the 1,000 life points. So basically this card lets you destroy 1 card on the field. We then play a single copy of Darklord Enchantment, which lets you take control of 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. We play a single copy of the Sanctified Darklord, which has the ability to send a Darklord monster from your hand or face-up from your field to the graveyard to negate the activation of 1, or negate the effects of 1 face-up effect monster on the field until the end of the turn. And if you do, you gain life points equal to the attack of that monster, which this card can actually come in handy to be able to turn the Christia off by banishing or by using this card with a copy of, say, a Shell on your field. Turn the Christie off during your turn and then let it go back on during your opponent's turn to be able to special summon during your turn, and then your opponent can't special summon. I've done that a lot in this deck and it is really good. We then play a single copy of Darklord Uprising. This is kind of like the fusion trap of the deck. This card lets you fusion summon a dark fusion monster from your X deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials, and then you gain life points equal to the original attack of the monster sent to the graveyard by this effect to be able to activate it, which is a pretty good effect. We then play my personal attack of this deck along with the Angel 01s is 3 copies of Necro Fusion. This card is ridiculous in this deck because it lets you fusion summon into your copy of the first Darklord during your opponent's turn. If you guys are unfamiliar with this card, when this card is summoned to your field using a Darklord Morningstar and you throw it on the field, it will destroy every single monster on the field, which is just insanely powerful with your copies of Necro Fusion to be able to destroy those monsters. So this card is a great 3 up to be able to summon out your first Darklord all the time in this deck. It's very easy to get to your copy of Darklord Morningstar with your copy of your Indulged Darklord, and then get it to the graveyard with your copy of Nadston or your copy of a Shell. So I cannot recommend this card enough in this deck. It is super, super good. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. I will mention one last thing about this card. The only downside of this card is that you banish the cards face down and the monster that you summon can't attack, but that's not even a really big downside because you're usually going to summon this during your opponent's turn. So that's it for the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of the first Darklord because this card is so easy to summon. It's still really good, even if you don't get the board wipe effect of using Darklord Morningstar to summon this card, but it has the ability that your opponent cannot target fairy monsters you control with card effects, and you can only use the effect of this card, or you can only use either or this card's effect once per turn. That if this card is fusion summoned using a Darklord Morningstar as a material, then you can destroy all cards your opponent controls on a 4,000 attack point monster. Usually when you resolve that during your opponent's turn with the copy of Necrofusion, your opponent's usually just going to end the game and say, hey, you win. It also has the ability that during the main phase, quick effect, you can pay 1,000 life points to special summon any fairy monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position, which is pretty good, especially if you have a copy of Archlord Christia in the graveyard. You can pay 1,000 life points to bring that card back to your side of the field, which is just really good. We then play a single copy of the Condemned Darklord. I just play one because the extra deck is very tight and has the ability to tribute summon fairy monsters that require 2 tributes by banishing 2 monsters from your graveyard instead of tributing them. And it also has the ability that you can discard a card to be able to take any Darklord monster from your deck to your hand and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard, which makes it super easy to get to your copy of Darklord Morningstar, especially if you want to get it in the graveyard. And then during the end phase, you can use the effect to gain 500 life points for each fairy monster on the field, which is going to include her, so you're automatically going to gain at least 500 life points to offset the cost of your Darklord's effects to be able to copy the spells and traps. Play a single copy of Access Code because it gives us all sorts of pops in this deck. This could be a Boral Sword if you want to change it out for that. 1 copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. If you use this card with IP Masquerena, it's going to be really, really difficult for your opponent to out this card, and it's a really good boss monster that actually you usually summon this card more often than the Access Code Talker, so you can drop the Access Code Talker if you want to play another copy of the Condemned Darklord. The reason I summon this more often is because when this Link Summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and also monsters cannot target monsters for attacks except for this one. And then once per battle during damage calculation, if this card battles a special summon monster, quick effect, you can make this card gain attack equal to the monster's attack point. So they're not going to be destroying it by card effects, not going to be destroying it by battle, not going to be targeting it. They have to hit it with a blanket effect that doesn't destroy it. So this card is very, very, very good. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is really good because it gives us monster negates, and you can summon this card very easily going turn 1 and get you all of the Darklords that you need in the graveyard for your copy of Necrofusion to line up for the next turn. We play a single copy of Nightmare Unicorn to be able to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and Cerberus to pop monsters. These are basically here because you need them to be able to pop cards that you want, and the Access Code Talker does give you additional plays when you use the copies of the Cerberus, Phoenix, and Unicorn to be able to give you an Earth, Fire, and Dark attribute. We then play a single copy of IP Masquerena because when you use this card as a material to be able to go in for a Link Summon, the monster that you Link Summon using this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. So this card works really, really well with your copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. For the other monsters, we're playing a single copy of the number 97. This card is really good because it can let you summon out your copy of number 38, which can eat spell cards, or number 100 to be able to go up to 9,000 attack points, which is just super good in this deck. We then play a single copy of Gustav Max to be able to do 2,000 points of damage to your opponent by detaching a material using 2 shells to go into this card. The only downside of this card is you have to only you can only special summon a shell once per turn, so you won't be going to this card on a single turn off a single special summon. And then we play a single copy of the Juggernaut Libby to go in for a 6,000 attack point monster. So this card is very, very good to be able to summon to your side of the field to just OTK the opponent. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck to play with. I love Darklords. I love this build especially because it's a little bit more affordable than the Despia version. And I really love playing the copies of Necrofusion because this card is literally the MVP. I wish I would have put this card in the deck a long time ago because being able to use the copy of Uprising Rising does cost a monster to be able to send to the graveyard, where this card can just use this card during your opponent's turn, which is just super, super good. So I really love this build. So definitely give it a try, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.